see if we can get that to work. Hello, Facebook. Very nice to be back with you today. How is everybody doing? I hope you are well. I'm just going to adjust my phones here. I have to use two phones. It's all very complicated because I have one for Instagram and one for Facebook. Hi, Sarah. We got Dr. Sarah Ball in the house, which is brilliant. She is just great. She works with Louise Newson, the menopause doctor, so really nice to have her with us. And thank you for all those who joined me on Instagram this morning. We were already having a bit of a chit chat about things. So yeah, Mitch, the sun is out and the world does feel a better place. Hopefully we're getting there. And one of the ways that we can get there, obviously as midlife women, is with help for our hormones. So I thought that what I'd do today is the last few Thursdays I've been joined by Dr. Louise Newson, who's been brilliant. And I didn't want to bother her today because I know she's so crazy busy with her practice and she's doing online consultations. She's working with Professor Spector on the COVID-19 symptom tracking app, which is now tracking hormonal symptoms and things like estrogen and HRT, because that has been shown to be protective potentially for COVID, because women who have high levels of estrogen seem to be suffering fewer of the really critical care symptoms. So that's a really interesting thing. So we eagerly await the results of those studies that are ongoing. So I thought that because menopause had become a bit of a theme for Thursdays, that I would continue it here with the help of some online friends. But also, yeah, Sarah, she's very dynamic. She's just top, and sending her lots of love and best wishes for the week ahead, what's left of it anyway. Well, actually, the days blur into one, and I know Louise is a bit like me. She's kind of working all over weekends and everything as well. But I thought that what I'd do is maybe take a step back from all the medical podcasts and things that I've been recording about hormones and just share with you a bit of my own journey, my personal journey as to how I got so involved in this whole thing, and share some of the experiences and some of the learnings. And I should say, right from the outset, I am not a doctor. I do actually have 2 honorary doctorates, so technically I could be Dr. Earle, but I don't agree with people who call themselves doctors unless they are a proper medical doctor. So anyway, so I'm not Dr. Earle, I'm just me talking to you as a woman, as a researcher who has written a lot about menopause over the years. And my journey started really writing about menopause really before I became aware of my own symptoms. Looking back, I just wish that I'd known sooner. And it's great that people are talking about it, that we're able to educate our daughters, our younger friends, our colleagues, just to become more aware, because it's not just, kind of an old lady thing. I think what I hadn't realised is that our hormones start to change really early in life. So you can be in your 30s and you can be having perimenopausal symptoms. And that's because as women, we run on estrogen. It's the fuel in our tank. It's what keeps us going. And it's our main hormone. And menopause technically is 1 year after our last period. So that might go on for years and years. You never kind of know, really. But perimenopause is the time leading up to that, when we have all these hormonal changes, because estrogen isn't a tap that suddenly gets switched off. We don't kind of wake up one day and go, oh, my estrogen's gone. It's a gradual decline, and it declines 10 years before your actual menopause. So you will be experiencing, or likely to be experiencing, symptoms of lowering levels of estrogen in your 40s, no question. That is very, very likely to be happening. And it's not just all about hot flushes and night sweats. I've never had a hot flush. I've never had a night sweat. I've woken up slightly warm a couple of times back in the day, but I've never had a night sweat or a hot flush. And yet, looking back in my 40s, there were times when, oh my goodness, I was definitely suffering from a drop in estrogen. And unfortunately, our estrogen doesn't just drop like that. It goes up a bit, and then, next day it crashes down a bit, and then it goes up a bit more, which is why we can get mood swings, which is why in our 40s, very often, some women it's much earlier, I think is it 1 in 100 women have early onset menopause. You can be in your 20s, your 30s, so, it's not that uncommon. It's not like a super rare thing. So be aware of it. Tell your girlfriends, tell your daughters, your nieces. So looking back on it, I was in my mid-40s, and for me that was a really unsettling time, because it was when I was working really hard with the Earle Beauty Company, with my business partner Kim and all the other stakeholders in the business who decided to sell the business. So I was spending a lot of time on aeroplanes going backwards and forwards. I was in New York, I was here, there and everywhere. I had younger children, very stressed. Anybody who's exited from a company and done that whole kind of business deal will know, especially when there are so many other people involved. People think, oh, Earle Beauty Company, it's just her and she sold it. No, not a bit of it. There are lots and lots of other people involved. It was very complicated. And I used to get really bad headaches, and I put that down to the stress. I put it down to working and pressures of work. And I think a lot of women in their 40s probably do the same, because it's a busy time, isn't it? We're very often at a stage in our careers, if we're working outside the home, when we have a lot on our plates, we're juggling. We're very often caring for potentially tricky people in our family. We may have teenagers who are an interesting bunch, aren't they? We may be caring for older parents. We may be that kind of sandwich generation where we're caring for younger members of our family and older generation. We may have relationship issues. There may be stuff going on at home. All of these things can make us feel a bit wobbly, and we may not necessarily link it to hormones. I know I didn't. So I used to have days when I used to have to go to bed with a really bad headache. I mean, nothing cut through it. And I just thought it was stress related. Looking back, I now know that so many of my headaches were caused by low levels of estrogen. I developed tinnitus in my ears. And I remember thinking one day, oh my goodness, is this what the rest of my life is going to be like when my hearing goes? And I have to live with this constant kind of, crackling and buzzing in my ears. And it was only actually having been on HRT for probably about 18 months when I realised that my hearing was absolutely fine and my tinnitus had gone. And when I did some research, I realised that actually we have estrogen receptors all over our bodies, including our ears. So, I say this to any audiology clinics out there, anybody who's involved in audiology, please, if you are presented with a middle-aged woman, please ask her about hormones first, because I know many friends who've had implants and all sorts of things and spending a huge amount of time and money and resources. Yeah, vertigo. Very interesting, Debbie. You commented on Instagram there. Again, vertigo, really relatively common symptom of lowering levels of estrogen. So you get dizziness, you get dizzy spells. As our testosterone levels fall as well, because women produce testosterone. This is a very interesting discussion. We actually produce more testosterone in our ovaries than we do estrogen. And testosterone, people tend to think of it, it's that kind of sex hormone, it's just for libido. And yes, obviously it does play a role in that. But actually testosterone has a really important function for our mental health, for cognitive function, for brain fog, for memory. When I started taking it, it was kind of the missing piece of the jigsaw for me. It's suddenly my mental clarity returned, and I got that crispness of thinking that I didn't have before. So anyway, I'm jumping ahead now. I'm going to tell you a bit about my journey. So my hormone journey is actually a little bit hard to describe because I had a very late baby. I was 47 when I had him, nearly 48. And actually, I thought he was the menopause because, when my periods stopped and were a bit erratic, I just thought, oh, well, that's it. That's my time of life and that's what's happening. But no, I was actually pregnant. So when they tell you it's not going to happen and it's too late, don't believe them. So, and HRT is not a contraceptive, by the way. So, you do still need to look after that if you are taking HRT and still having periods. So my hormone journey was quite blurred because I had this lovely late surprise and then I was breastfeeding and all of that. So, my hormones were fluctuating anyway. And then it was a few years after that, I suppose, when I started researching my book on menopause. So I was aware that people were beginning to talk about menopause, and I thought, kind of heading into my 50s, this is something that I need to know about, and nobody's talking about it. I've had 5 children, and so I've had 5 lots of GP visits, 5 lots of health visitors, 5 lots of midwives, all of that. At no point did anybody say to me, oh, by the way, Liz, when you're in your 40s, you might start to feel a bit different. You may feel very tired, you may not sleep as well, you may get mood swings, all of that. Don't worry about it because we can help you by replacing the hormones that you're missing. So I didn't get that at all. So I was really unaware that all of this was going on. And I would get flashes of rage as well. I don't know whether, you've ever felt like that when you've been with somebody and, just the fact that they're breathing next to you. Oh, that's enough to set you off. That door slamming, outburst. And you think, well, where did that come from? And it's these hormones that are spiking and we are real kind of victims of those. And a lot of relationships get destroyed because of that. A lot of men don't understand what's going on and we don't understand what's going on. And sometimes we can just end up feeling very flat. That's the other thing, that our joy can be missing from our lives because the estrogen robs us of that as it declines. And there's a growing body of evidence and a growing number of medics who now think that actually, menopause and talking about replacing hormones, it's really what we're talking about is estrogen insufficiency. We are losing our estrogen, and we know that estrogen is responsible for so much in our body. As I said, it's not just the hot flushes. For me, it was lack of sleep. That was really the thing that sent me to talk to my GP, because I've always slept really well. And I'm busy, I do a lot and I like doing a lot. And that really works as long as I sleep. If I get my 7 hours, 7.5 hours, that's all fine. But I was starting to wake up at 4 a.m. and my heart was racing and I wasn't having a hot flush, but I'd feel slightly warm. And I think, why am I awake? Why am I suddenly awake at 4 a.m? And that insomnia is a massive symptom of perimenopause or menopause. And literally, the day I got my estrogen gel, I put my estrogen gel on that night. And that night, I had the best night's sleep I've had for years. I mean, it was just amazing. It was remarkable. The estrogen gel just went through my skin, into my system, replaced what I was missing, and there we go. And I've never looked back. So I began writing. I've skipped ahead a bit, actually, because this is the book that I wrote before that, before my own journey. I was writing this kind of while I was finding out all about HRT and the safety of it. So this was the Good Menopause Guide. And when I wrote this, I was actually quite anti-HRT because I'd read a lot of the media and I hadn't done my research. I was kind of going into that. So I was very just guided by what was around and what had been online and, written in the good old Daily Mail and stuff like that and all those trusted resources. So anyway, so I started with the help of another researcher. I was writing and I was put in touch with Louise Newson, Dr. Louise Newson. That's how I got to know her. It was actually for a little mini book I did before the Good Menopause Guide. And she said to me, I'm sorry, that's my phone. Hopefully somebody will answer that. She said to me, actually, I'm sorry to tell you, Liz, but a lot of this information that's out there is actually wrong. And she put me in touch with other clinicians and she showed me all the research and the data. And I began to do a whole kind of lengthy investigation into why there was so much misinformation out there about the links with cancer and why women weren't being prescribed it, why doctors didn't know about it. I mean, if it's such an obvious basic thing, why isn't there more known about it? And I began to unravel a massive, massive subject, which I've then become really quite passionate about because I do believe that there is a huge healthcare injustice. And I think it's discrimination. I think it's discrimination against women. I think the resources aren't being put into simple, safe, cheap, effective healthcare for midlife women. And believe you me, when we are out of this lockdown situation, I've joked about this before about chaining myself to railings in Parliament Square, but I think there's going to be a large number of us who are going to be doing exactly that, because HRT, hormone replacement therapy, is a natural form of hormonal care. You're replacing what your body is missing. In the old days, our life expectancy as women was very young. The average life expectancy was kind of 60. And also the average age of menopause was later. It was around 57, 58. These days, the average age of menopause is much earlier. It's around 51. And of course, for women, our life expectancy is into our 80s. So we're likely to actually have more years without our periods than we've had them with. So we need to think about how do we then protect our health going forward. And estrogen is the key, because it's been shown to help our brains. We have estrogen receptors in our brains, which is now being looked at for things like dementia, which is so important, Alzheimer's. There's really interesting studies coming out. I'm due to do a podcast with an American researcher who's been publishing work on that very thing, a neuroscientist. As we mentioned, we're looking at the immune system. We're looking at COVID-19 now, and why women are better protected seemingly than men. Is there an estrogen connection? We have estrogen receptors in our bones, which is why when we start to lose our estrogen, we get terrible achy joints, and we might think that we've all got arthritis. I know many friends who've gone off to rheumatology clinics and been prescribed anti-rheumatoid drugs and all of that, and actually when they've gone replace their estrogen, fine. I did a talk it must be about 2 months ago now, in my local village hall, and an acquaintance of mine came up afterwards and said, do you know, I think this could be the missing link for me, because I have spent a fortune, literally, on naturopaths, herbal medicine, supplements, complementary therapies, all this stuff, and resisting HRT because I didn't realise how safe and effective it was. And anyway, long story short, she went to see a menopause specialist, and the very next day she wrote to me, she said, I cannot believe it. I've been using my estrogen gel. I've had the best night's sleep I've had in 7 years. And I just feel such a fool for not having stepped into it sooner. And I think a lot of us feel like that when we do finally realise. But, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to talk for a lot longer, aren't I, than my normal half an hour, because there's so many questions coming in. And it's Dr. Mosconi's book coming here, Lisa Mosconi. There are just so many benefits. So anyway, so the Good Menopause Guide I wrote, and one chapter in that is on HRT. Okay, the whole book is not about HRT, just one chapter. But in writing it, I wanted to, there's a lot about recipes, and because it's all about low GI eating and taking supplements and all sorts of other stuff. But at the back of the book, I put all the medical references, because everything I do, and I try and do here at Earle Wellbeing, is evidence-based. I don't follow fads. I don't write stuff that's spurious. I try and, so each chapter there has all the clinical references. So I wanted it to be a resource that could be read by practice nurses or GPs or anybody, and be bulletproof. Anyway, that was my first kind of journey into that. The elephant in the room always when you're talking about menopause is HRT. Everybody wants to know about it. Is it safe? Why isn't it safe? Is it going to give me breast cancer? Well, the studies are very, very clear. Estrogen is very safe. The bad press basically came out of a wrongly reported study back in 2000, the Women's Health Initiative, for which many of the authors of that in America have since publicly apologised for the damage that they have done for women's healthcare globally. I mean, the damage is legion. They are responsible for potentially millions of deaths and a huge amount of unhappiness and suffering. I mean, it's just extraordinary. And, you don't have to take my word for it. You start to research this, and it's really very, very scary. So, in fact, I was looking at printing off a couple of the papers here. This was one, actually, this is from the Climacteric, which is the International Journal for the Menopause Society, which is run by professors and leading experts around the globe. And this was a paper that was written in 2018, I think it was published. I printed it off from the Menopause Doctor website, which is brilliant. You must go there after this and look up all her stuff, and it's so easy to navigate. She's got downloads and fact sheets. She's got information for GPs. She's got prescribing guidelines that you can take to your GP. She's got the Greens Climacteric table, which you can fill in to assess your symptoms so that you've got something to present to your GP. It's really, really good. She is changing the lives of so many women. I mean, she deserves a damehood, no question. Anyway, so this paper, I was just going through it, and I've just marked some of the stuff that's on here. So I'll just read this to you. This is the conclusion, okay, and this is looking at the breast cancer risks in particular. And it says, after 5 decades of study, 50 years of study, no conclusive evidence, including the Women's Health Initiative and various other trials, proves that hormone treatment causes breast cancer. And in fact, the overwhelming preponderance of data, including the Women's Health Initiative, show that estrogen and progesterone therapy has a zero effect on breast cancer. Additionally, estrogen alone as randomised trials, which are the good ones, including the Women's Health Initiative trials show, possibly prevents development of and deaths due to breast cancer. I mean, that is earth-shattering news. This is what should be on the front page of the Daily Mail, not the studies that get reported, the epidemiological trials that were so skewed that were still rerun in the Lancet last year. I mean, again, it makes me so mad. Anyway, I did warn you on Instagram that this would be a soapbox. Again, here, underline, no increased risk of breast cancer, okay? These are global professors, experts in hormone treatment and menopause who are saying this. Not me, this is them, printed online. Go online, take a look. And then it says here, it can be argued that considerable damage to women and women's health has occurred through misrepresentation and overgeneralisation of the breast cancer data, since women are now reluctant to use and health providers are reluctant to prescribe hormone treatment, either estrogen or in combination with a progesterone. Unfortunately, this is true even for women who are clearly suffering from menopausal symptoms. Well, fortunately for us on Facebook and on Instagram, we have access to great medics. If you look at my Instagram post, you'll see if you press on that, it's the one with wisteria around the door. I wanted to make it a pretty picture so that people would be attracted to it and look at it. If you tap on that, you'll see about a dozen or so health practitioners and really great campaigners that I rate and I know are based on evidence-based information. They are not in it for the money. They do not want to sell you bioidentical hormones, compounded hormones, which are unregulated and potentially unsafe. And the reason they're potentially unsafe is there's no evidence that taking progesterone like yam cream, for example, through the skin gives you sufficient uterine protection to protect you against uterine cancer. It's an unregulated and extremely expensive thing. I know women who've spent literally thousands of pounds on these so-called bioidentical profiteering clinics. Yeah, profiteering from anxious, vulnerable women. When this is good information they should be getting from their GPs, free of charge, regulated, clinical, evidence-based and safe. Okay, is that enough of a rant? Whew, right. So, easy prescribing guidelines. I want to share this with you, actually. This is something that I was shown by a doctor. So it's anonymous, so I'm not breaking any confidentiality, patient confidentiality, by sharing it with you. But the reason why blood tests and things don't work, and it makes me mad that you can go into Boots or Superdrug now and buy these supposedly hormone testing kits for 20 quid or whatever. They just give you a snapshot of that day. But as I explained, your hormone levels go up and down all the time, up and down. So this, for example, this was a lady who's aged 38, and this was her FSH level chart. Okay, this is your follicle stimulating hormone level. And this was over a month when it was tracked. So you can see here it's quite high, it peaks, nothing, a little bit here, peaks again. So on which day would you like to take your test, madam? I'm going to take it here. Oh, yeah. Oh, look, you've got lots of hormone here. Oh, no, actually, I'm taking it next Tuesday. Oh, no, none. No, you don't need anything. It's a load of rubbish, actually. I would rip it up, but I'm going to keep it because I use it as a prop, maybe for my talks in future. But you know what? You get the, I'm virtually ripping this up, okay? Save your money. Dutch test, all of that. You do not need it. The NICE guidelines are very clear. If you're over the age of 45 and you go to your doctor, you do not need a blood test. In fact, you shouldn't have a blood test because it'll give you a false negative or a false positive. You go by symptoms alone, and that's why things like the Green's climacteric score chart is so important to fill in because it monitors all things from mood, emotion, night sweats, hot flushes, headaches. Did you know that if you have migraine, yes, you can replace your estrogen? Yes, you can take it. They say don't take it as tablets, but have it through the skin. So I'm going to show you. This is the easy prescribing guideline, by the way. If you're interested, I'm sorry it's coming out backwards. This is, again, I printed this off this morning from Louise's website, Menopause Doctor. This is the Primary Care Women's Health Forum Easy HRT Prescribing Guide. It's really worth reading before you go to your GP because the chances are you will then know much more than your GP because your GP is not trained in this unless they want to go and get retrained. You don't get all of this taught to you, even now at medical school. You get very, very basic kind of what is menopause. And a lot of that information is outdated and wrong, as I will show you later, I will prove. So it talks about how to prescribe it, what to take, all the different types. And now Louise has brilliantly gone back and she's updated the prescribing guidelines for online. A lot of doctors now are doing online consultations. I know she's doing online consultations with her doctors and her nurses in the clinic, which I think is great because you don't have to travel. And to get to see her and her lovely doctors, you have to go to Stratford-upon-Avon, which is, quite a journey and can cost a lot of money and take a lot of time. But how brilliant that we can all be connected through this. So it is possible to get diagnosis, treatment and care through... thanks, Dr. Zoe. Dr. Zoe Hodson is also chatting on my Instagram and answering questions. That's so brilliant because I'm just sitting here and gabbling. I know we all multitask, but I can't do everything. But I'm so passionate about sharing this information with you and getting it out there so that you can then absorb it, go away, do your research. We've hopefully got a bit of time during this period where we can maybe, not all of us, I know many of us are still working or going back to work, but many of us do have the opportunity to be at home now listening to podcasts, or maybe, when you're travelling on your way to work, you can listen to podcasts, or if you're out for your walk or whatever. There is so much good information out there, but there's also a lot of rubbish. So that's why you need to be really careful who you choose to follow. It's got to be evidence-based. It's got to be really credible. Follow the money. What are they trying to sell you? Are they trying to sell you an expensive, thousands of pounds of supplements and tests and all of that? It's deeply suspect, and there is a huge amount of profiteering to be done. And what makes me so angry is that it's middle-aged, vulnerable women who are already suffering from great anxiety, who are so anxious anyway. Because when we lose estrogen from our brains, it causes anxiety. So you're in this awful kind of circle of hell because you're feeling anxious anyway. You're then really vulnerable to the scaremongering, misinformed headlines. And let's face it, the news channels, online news providers, newspapers, even TV programs, they are after your eyeballs, They want you to click through, it's clickbait, they want you to buy their newspaper, they want you to watch their program, whatever it is. It's sensationalism. And saying, actually HRT is really good for your health. It's not a headline, is it? No, HRT causes breast cancer. Yeah, much, much scarier, even if it's not true. Now, we do know that some of those headlines are beginning to recede, but they're still so deeply ingrained. And when you are suffering with anxiety and you're feeling so fearful anyway, it's very hard to shake that off. The spectre of breast cancer looms large, and 1 in 7 of us or 1 in 8 of us will be affected regardless. So that's 1 in 7 or 8 of us if you're taking HRT, and 1 in 7 or 8 if you're not taking HRT. It's the risk factors for breast cancer are far greater if we're overweight, if we're smoking, if we're drinking even just 2 glasses of wine a night, which I have to say I am. Those are the risk factors if we don't exercise. But of course, once you sort out your hormones and your joint aches go and your mood improves and you get your sleep, you also strengthen your bones. Osteoporosis leaches estrogen, is caused rather by the leaching of estrogen, the loss of estrogen from our bones. So even the NICE guidelines say that we should be looking at HRT as the primary replacement, the primary support for osteoporosis, and not the bisphosphonates and all the other things that we're given. Antidepressants, they're not going to help menopausal anxiety. They're just going to numb you. They're not going to replace your estrogen in your brain. The only way you can do that is by replacing your estrogen. And estrogen, sometimes people say to me, oh, but Liz, I thought you were really into natural stuff, and you always talk about plants and botanicals, and I can't believe that you do something so synthetic and so medical. Trust me, replacing natural estrogen with natural estrogen is natural. Okay, what bit of that is not natural? I'm not taking a drug. I'm not even taking a herb. I'm not made of herbs, I'm made of estrogen. Okay, so for me to have herbs is not a natural thing. I'm not a plant, I'm a person. So body identical estrogen, which is what we're talking about. So we're not talking about the old school type of HRT that was made from horses' wee, literally Premarin, pregnant mare's urine, that's where it comes from. Still natural, obviously, it's a natural thing. But modern HRT, all gels, all patches are derived from a plant. They come from wild yam, so it's botanical. Okay, so I've got my herbal stuff, I'm rubbing it on, it's a plant. And it's body identical to what I have in my body already. So if you put it under a microscope, molecularly, it's the same. So because it's the same as my body, it's not going to interfere with any other drug treatment. So people often say, oh, but I'm on thyroxine, can I still have estrogen? Or I'm taking, some other kind of medication, can I still have estrogen? Well, of course you can. You've got it anyway. It's part of you. So I think this is the thing, that it's not a totally new, different form of medical care. It's replacing estrogen. It comes back to my earlier point about menopause and symptoms of menopause really being looked at as estrogen insufficiency. We're losing estrogen, so let's hang on to it. We're living longer now, thankfully. We have more nutrition, we have better healthcare, we are fit. Hopefully we're better able to stave off infectious diseases or septicemia, all the things that used to kill us off in the old days. And yet our bodies do run out of estrogen. I mean, that is just a fact. And it's never too late to replace it. Now, according to the NICE guidelines, up until the age of 60, it's relatively straightforward to start prescribing and start taking estrogen. Later than that, you may well need to either go to a really well-informed GP who understands about menopause and hormones, or go to a menopause specialist. Unfortunately, the menopause clinics, the NHS clinics, are not being funded and they're closing, which is why Dr. Louise Newson, who's desperate to work in the NHS, had to start the private clinic. And a lot of her doctors who work with her, some of them work part-time within the NHS, but then they just can't get funding for menopause care, so then they switch to do their private clinic work. But what I love about Menopause Doctor, and all her doctors there, and many of you are here commenting, which is so fabulous, thank you, is that you have your initial consultation with women who very often, have to save up. But trust me, this is like the best value money, rather than go on holiday, please go and have a consultation, a proper consultation with a menopause specialist who will be able to help you. And then they feed back to your GP. They're not like the profiteering private clinics that want to keep seeing you month after month to prescribe you more unregulated compound stuff. No. They want to give you what you need, get it to you on the NHS, let your GP know, so they can then continue the care locally. So, I mean, that is why they are just so brilliant, and I'm really happy to sit here and promote them and talk about them because they provide such an amazing service. So, so much to talk about. The other thing that I really want to talk about, which is seriously going to get me on my soapbox, oh my goodness. Okay, so you've recognised your symptoms, you've plucked up courage to talk to your doctor, or you get a private appointment somewhere with a proper menopause specialist who is going to give you regulated hormones. That's the key. Always ask, are these regulated? Okay, you want regulated hormones, body identical regulated hormones from the wild yam. Just saw a comment here on Facebook talking about the wild yam plant. No, unfortunately, you can't just eat wild yam or take wild yam. Somebody else asking about medical qualifications. So I've been writing about health and well-being for the last 35 years, and I'm a researcher and a writer. So I don't give medical advice. I report on others' findings. So I recommend books like Estrogen Matters by Professor Avram Blooming. All my medical references are in the back of my books. The downloads that I've written, which you can get from my website, I've written The Truth About Menopause here, and also this one, which is The Truth About HRT, which is full if you are specifically interested in HRT. And I just want to read you, just in case you are concerned that I'm making all this stuff up, okay? This is Professor Michael Baum, who was the lead breast cancer oncologist at the Royal Marsden Hospital and the lead clinical researcher on all the tamoxifen trials. And he has written here an endorsement of my e-guide, The Truth About HRT, which is quite long. You can download it from Earle Wellbeing. He says, he writes quite a lot about it actually, but he says at the end here, Liz Earle's e-booklet does a brilliant job of safely steering the worried woman through this minefield to a safe and comfortable outcome the other side. That was written by Professor Michael Baum. There's another one here by Professor Nick Panay, who is the General Secretary of the International Menopause Society. He has said here, as a healthcare professional who has managed menopause-related issues for many years, I strongly believe that the valuable information provided by Liz Earle in her book should be essential reading for women of all ages. Signed, Professor Nick Panay, consultant gynaecologist. Okay, so just want to share that with you. So, where was I? Yes, this is a big one. Okay, so we have overcome our anxiety. We have downloaded all the information. We've listened to podcasts. We have followed all the medics online who talk about this, the proper medics, the good ones. We have spoken to our GP, and our GP is informed, and sadly many aren't, but many are. I'm not GP bashing. Oh my goodness, GPs, we love them. They do such a great job, and it's a tragedy that they are being let down by not being given the right information. So they might prescribe you your estrogen gel or your Utrogestan. I've got various ones here to show you, for example. And you get it home, and you probably do what you've never done before. You actually read what's in the little leaflet. Okay? How many of us take aspirin and paracetamol and stuff? Always comes with a little leaflet telling us about, heart disease and death. We don't read it. We just take the painkiller because we're in pain. But we read this, and we may have had a thrombosis or a DVT or a clot or have migraine or be worried about breast cancer. But we've read all the good information, and we know that that's not the case because we've got the transdermal gel or we've got the estrogen patches. And it says in here, hold on a minute, it says, do not use estrogel if you've ever had breast cancer, or if you are sensitive, or if you have had a clot, or if you have migraine, or hold on a minute, it says it causes excessive lining of the womb. All of these things, diabetes. Hey, what is this? I can't take this. Bearing in mind you're already anxious because you haven't got any estrogen. Did you know that these leaflets are incorrect? And if there are any lawyers out there, please get in touch with me, because this is probably what I am going to be chaining myself to railings for. This information is out of date and incorrect. It relates mainly to the older format of HRT that comes in tablet form. It's to do with blood clotting, for example, to do with the clotting factors in your liver. So if you are having estrogen through your skin, through patch or gel, there are no clotting factors. You can use it if you have migraine. You can use it if you have high blood pressure. In fact, studies show it lowers blood pressure. You can use it if you've had a DVT. Estrogen-only HRT has no link with breast cancer. So unfortunately, you read this, and I have given many talks over the years now around the country, and I have spoken about this, and I've had women come up to me afterwards in tears saying, I can't believe it, I do have my gel. I have it sat at home in the cupboard, but I read the leaflet and I was too frightened to use it. This leaflet is wrong. Okay, it's wrong. Please, seriously, if you're a lawyer or you specialise in medical negligence or legal work, or you know somebody that can help with this, because I know that Dr. Louise Newson and various other people have been in touch with the Medicines Agency trying to get this changed, because not only is this information incorrect, but it's also the information that the GP sees on their computer screen. You know, when you go for a consultation and the GP, is tapping away and it looks up and it pulls down the details of what you might be prescribed. And you've said, yeah, but I get migraine, but I understand I can have the gel or I can have the patch because that's not linked to migraine. And the GP is going, oh, okay, fine, let me have a look and I'll check. And then he or she will read the same information on their computer screen. They go, well, no, you can't have this because this is causing clots. And you go, but no, but I've read that actually I've seen the evidence. I've read the NICE guidelines and it contradicts. So your poor GP... Your GP may know, and your GP may override it and say, yeah, of course you can have this, but of course you get this home and this information is wrong. And, I was so disheartened because you may have heard me talk with Dr. Louise Newson on a recent podcast about a new form of estrogen. So I've been using the gel. So I started off with 2 pumps of gel in the evening, and I've now used 5 or 6 because that's what I need for it. I mean, some women actually don't absorb it very well. They need a bit more. And I find that with 5 or 6 pumps of gel, I get a really good night's sleep. But that means I'm rubbing on quite a lot of gel. And it takes a bit of time to absorb. I rub it all over my hips and thighs, and that's my kind of nighttime ritual. And anyway, she was telling me about this spray, new estrogen spray, which I've got here to show you. This is what it looks like. It's called Lenzetto. Okay, it comes in a little plump. And you can use this, you basically put it on your skin like that, and it just delivers, you can see it there, estrogen pump. So I got this and I thought, oh, that's great, it's new. So let me have a look at the leaflet, because surely, being a new thing, it will not have any of those ridiculous risks associated with it, which I know are untrue, and so do all the medics, or the specialist medics. No, unfortunately, when you read this, it talks about HRT and cancer, HRT and high blood pressure, HRT and blood clots. Okay, so this is wrong, and this is what medics and people working in medicine control need to change. It needs to be evidence-based. We need to get the truth out there so that women can be better protected and better helped. So talking about estrogen, so I use estrogen. That was I first started off with estrogen and progesterone. So those are the two that are the main ones that you start with. If you have your uterus, so if you haven't had a hysterectomy, you need progesterone. And you need progesterone because it protects the lining of your womb. That's why you don't need it. You only need estrogen if you've had a hysterectomy. You can still use HRT if you've had endometriosis. I know we've had questions about that. I printed this off. Again, this is from the Menopause Doctor website. Sorry, it's come out backwards, but this is a fact sheet that you can take a look at. It's endometriosis and HRT. So that tells you all about it if you want to read that, and you can also take that to your doctor if you need to. So my own journey was to start with the estrogen, the gel. And as I said, the very first time I used it, I had a great night's sleep. And of course, over time, all my other symptoms that I hadn't realised were related to lowered levels of estrogen disappeared. So things like headaches. I mean, I used to always travel with a packet of ibuprofen in my bag, always, because I never knew when I was going to get a really bad headache. And I don't know, and I can't remember the last time I had to take a painkiller for my head. I sleep right the way through the night. I don't wake up. Interestingly, Oprah Winfrey, she used to get heart palpitations, and she was in her 40s. And of course, Oprah being the great Oprah, I mean, she has doctors on her show. She's got Dr. Oz, she's got all these people. You know, there isn't a doctor in America that doesn't want to treat Oprah Winfrey. So when she started to have heart palpitations, she saw all these cardiologists, and she had lots of heart scans and CTIs and whatever. And nobody could fix it. And she thought, well, this is terrible. You know, it's really affecting my work and all the live TV shows that I do and all of this. And it was only when she had a woman on her show who was talking about menopause, who mentioned irregular heartbeat and palpitations being hormonal. And she said, sorry, what did you say? He said, well, yeah, it's a classic symptom of the menopause, it's a vasomotor symptom, a racing heart. So she went off and got herself some estrogen, and her palpitations stopped. So she's become quite a passionate HRT advocate through her own experience. So yes, so all of those symptoms stopped for me. My joints, I've never really had achy, creaky joints. But I now, you know, as you can see from my training that I do with Michael Gary, I'm weight training, I'm running, I'm feeling really fit and strong and well. I know my bones are better protected for the future for osteoporosis. I had a fracture probably about 10 years ago, more than that, 12 years ago. And I broke my wrist quite badly, and it took ages to heal, and it was really debilitating, and it made me realise actually that bone health is really serious, and we know that it's a big killer. Osteoporosis is a big killer for women. So if we can do things to strengthen our bones naturally and that encourage us to take more weight-bearing exercise. So I've now got, I can see there's so much chat going on here. Sorry. It's I'm trying to keep my train of thought, because I know that there's a lot of chat. There's so much chat about these compounded body identicals, these creams. What is it, Serenity cream or something? No, just get proper regulated micronized progesterone. That brings me on to this. So this is what I take. This is utrogestan. So I need progesterone because I've still got my uterus. Okay, so this is body identical, or bioidentical if you like. I mean, the term is interchangeable, but it's regulated. It's not compounded in some backstreet pharmacy. This is regulated, body identical. So it's the same as naturally in my body. And it's a capsule, and I take one every night. You can take it sequentially. So women who are still having periods may be prescribed it with a break, a bit like taking the pill. But this is what it looks like, just a capsule. So I just take one, and it makes you feel a little bit sleepy, not massively so, but I take it at bedtime, so great. So I take that all the time, and this again comes from the wild yam plant. Okay, it's body identical, micronized progesterone, and no links with cancer, protective. Interesting new research coming out of France, where researchers have been tracking this for about 5 years, showing it's lowering rates of many kinds of cancer. In fact, women who are on HRT have a 30% less risk of bowel cancer, colon cancer, which is such a big killer. So really interesting. And many studies actually in America also using estrogen-only treatments for breast cancer. So, I mean, really fascinating stuff. I know the Menopause Doctor has recorded lots of podcasts and information about breast cancer. There's also lots of fact sheets on her website. Please do go and download them, take a look. Read the book Estrogen Matters by Professor Avram Blooming. Both his wife and his daughter have had breast cancer. He's a breast cancer specialist and surgeon, now retired, but a global expert, very, very well regarded. And his book, Estrogen Matters, is really fascinating. And both his wife and his daughter are on HRT, and he's very happy for them to be on that. I've recorded podcasts with Kirsty Lang, for example, who's being treated for estrogen receptor breast cancer and takes HRT. So there's lots out there. So my journey, this was meant to be kind of a personal journey as well as answering a few questions. So I started with estrogen gel and the micronized daily Utrogestan. And that's what I continue with. I've now been using this little spray just because it's easier than rubbing so much gel on, but it's the same stuff. Really happy with it. I intend to carry on with it forever. You don't have to stop. They used to think that it was, a 5-year period and then you stopped, or you got to the age of 60 and you stopped. But no. What's the actual increased risk of breast cancer? None with estrogen only. You may need, if you've joined this late, Fiona, you may need to rewind when I've saved it, or go onto Facebook later and actually watch the whole thing. Or please head to the Menopause Doctor and download the fact sheets. Or you can download my e-guide too. I've got the Truth About HRT on here, which you can download. I've just printed this one out, but it is actually a download. You can look at it on your phone or computer or whatever, or print it off. So my life was really looking very much better. I was still getting some memory issues, busy working, tiny bit of brain fog. So it was suggested that I introduce testosterone into the mix. And that's often the kind of the holy trinity, if you like, the 3 hormones for hormone replacement therapy. You start with estrogen and progesterone. And it's not one size fits all. So I know there's been lots of questions about it's not right for me, it causes bloating, I've got breast tenderness. It can take up to 3 months when you start your HRT to get it right. And you may need a period of adjustment. I was lucky. For me, I took the gel. I needed to increase the dose, but I had the gel and I had the Utrogestan, and for me, no issues. For some women, they're very sensitive to progesterone, so they might use the Utrogestan. You can use it vaginally, for example, but not many doctors know that, and that's an off-license use, so they have got to have, obviously, some knowledge and some confidence that it's fine to do that. Lots of doctors prescribe off-license. It's not an unusual thing, but it just means to say they need a little bit more information about it to feel confident, because they are stepping up and saying, actually, yes, you can do this, even though that's not a licensed use for it. So I was very fortunate in that my HRT worked really well. A lot of women will have the Mirena coil. That's your progesterone part. So if you've got the Mirena coil, you just need to add in your estrogen. You could do that through a patch or a gel would be the safest form. If you take tablets and you get on with the tablets, fine. The risk is minimal. It's really, really small. And the health benefits, cutting the rate of coronary heart disease by 52%. Coronary heart disease is our biggest killer for women. 52% you can cut that risk. colon cancer cut by 30%, looking at decreasing rates of dementia, help with diabetes, the first choice of action for anxiety, getting people off antidepressants, for strengthening bones, for improving outcomes for osteoporosis and warding that off. I mean, the benefits. And I should say, actually, I hope you know that I have no financial interest in this whatsoever. I have never been funded by a drug company. I am a researcher, a writer. I feel passionately that this information is so valuable for all of womankind. And, you can choose to use it or not. I'm not saying you have to do it by any means. And of course, you can control hot flushes to a certain extent. Some people can anyway, by taking herbs like sage. But bear in mind that you've got to be careful with things like sage, because too much will cause liver damage. And it's not going to replace your estrogen. So it may help control a vasomotor symptom like a hot flush, but it's not going to strengthen your bones. It's not going to have any impact on your mental health. Sorry, getting back here, and I know I've overrun. I'm really sorry. This is going to be an hour rather than the usual kind of 30 minutes. I hope that's okay. I started with estrogen and my progesterone. I then added a little bit of testosterone. Now, you can get that. Some doctors will prescribe it for women through the NHS, but it's off licence. So it's not that it's unsafe, it's just that it's not licensed for women. And this is, I think, where a lot of the healthcare injustice comes in, because really, do we really care about women's libido or brain fog or mood? Can't really be bothered to license testosterone for women. It's quite expensive. It costs hundreds of thousands of pounds to license a medication. You don't make much money out of testosterone. It's not like an anti-cancer drug or something like that. So it hasn't been done. And yes, of course, men, this is the Testogel, which is prescribed for men. This is what I use. You don't need to use as much, because obviously the guidelines are for men. So I would just use a tiny bit, like a little pea-sized amount like that. And just rub that on. I just rub that on in the evening, just as I'm doing my gel or spray or whatever. You can now get one that is licensed for women, and it's called Androfem. That's what it looks like. It comes in a pink tube. So we know it's for girls because it's pink. This is from Western Australia, where it's licensed for women. It's only available at the moment on a private prescription, and it's expensive. So again, you just use a little pea-sized amount. It's just a cream. I know of women who buy testosterone or get their testosterone online from an online pharmacy by using a male email address. Crazy. Talk to your doctor if you're interested. I always say if you want to talk to your GP, it's always worth ringing the GP practice or finding out who is interested in menopause, who's maybe taken the extra bit of training, or is there a practice nurse there who knows. Menopause Doctor website has also got a list of really good doctors and clinics who work around the country, because we just need to get this information out there. So that was the third thing that I started to take, and I do think that it's helped my memory. I do feel mentally quite alert. I mean, I still get angry about stuff, but I think hopefully I'm getting angry for the right reasons. I'm getting angry about injustice or misinformation, rather than just having a sudden mood swing and an irrational bit of anger. And then the last thing that I've introduced more recently, which has really helped me, and that is vaginal estrogen. So I use this, it's called Vagifem, and it's a little pellet. You can see at the end of the applicator, and that's just what you use, and you just use that a couple of times a week, or you can get a cream as well. And vaginal estrogen is unbelievably safe. Even women with active estrogen receptive breast cancer, the menopause doctors, the specialists, are working with oncologists to give it to women, and the reason for that is it's localized. It just stays within the vagina area, within the pelvic region. It's like the Mirena coil has a tiny, tiny bit of progesterone. It's actually a progestogen that's within the Mirena coil. It's not systemic. It doesn't go throughout the body. I think the amount of progesterone or progestogen in the Mirena coil is equivalent to 1 Utrogestin capsule a year, or it might be 2. Okay, I take one of these every night. So if I had the Mirena coil, I'd be getting a tiny, tiny amount. But it's enough. It's enough to protect your uterus, because it's that's where it is. That's where it's releasing the stuff. It's not circulating around the whole body like mine is, using the body identical regulated progesterone here. So the same theory is with the vaginal estrogen. It stays in place. And what it's doing, there's been a lot of talk online, and you can, I'm glad Dr. Sarah Ball saying, ditch the leaflets, they are shockingly inaccurate. Brilliant. Absolutely. Come on, Sarah, you and me both. We're chaining ourselves to those railings. Come on, does anybody know a lawyer? Please, hq@lizzawellbeing.com. If you're a lawyer or you know a lawyer, let's get some traction here, because we've been talking, I know behind the scenes, a lot of doctors have been talking to the Medicines Control Agency and all of that for a long time, trying to get these leaflets changed and the information that doctors are being given changed so it's accurate. Can you imagine any other kind of medication where you open this and it's wrong? Can you imagine the outcry, the public outcry and outrage that there would be, that because you're being missold something, essentially? I mean, it's just the discrimination for women's health, I think, is shocking. Oh, right, calm down, let's calm down. Where was I? Totally lost my train of thought. Vaginal estrogen, that's where I was. And I'm just going to finish on this now, partly because I'm desperate for a glass of water. But so vaginal estrogen for me was just that last little bit of the puzzle going in. And what we know is that estrogen is really important for all the UTIs, cystitis, not only vaginal dryness, but it's just for keeping the tissues in that area healthy. I used to get lots of cystitis and UTIs and urinary tract infections, which would then lead to bladder infections. And I used to have endless rounds of antibiotics, and I used to take my probiotics and I'd have to kill them all off with antibiotics. I mean, it was just awful. But since using estrogen, I have never had an issue. And for me, the last little bit, just to make sure that my pelvic health is really, really top, is just using just a little bit of the local vaginal estrogen. So I'm using the estrogen gel or the spray, which is regulated, body identical, super safe. I'm going to take it forever. I'm using the micronized progesterone because I still have a uterus, so I still need to protect the lining of my womb. I'm using a tiny bit of testosterone, mainly for mental clarity, for mood, and for memory, and for getting rid of brain fog. And I'm just topping up everything with just a little bit of the vaginal estrogen as well, which is really helpful for UTIs and cystitis. So that is my regime. You can read all about it online. Liz Earle Wellbeing website, we've got a whole section now on menopause because it's become such a big area. I never in my wildest dreams thought that I'd be sitting here sharing all of this with all of you, but I think it's really important, and there is a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of profiteering and scaremongering. There's a lot of deliberate obscuring of information. This needs to be medically backed, evidence-based, and a huge thank you to all the doctors who have joined in with this and helping answer things. I think I'm about to get cut off and thrown off Instagram because I've talked for so long. You can download The Truth About HRT, that's on my website. You can download The Truth About Menopause. I do send out books from here if you want. You can get signed copies of The Good Menopause Guide, but they're actually cheaper on Amazon, so you might want to do that instead. I'll be back with you tomorrow. I promise not to talk for so long tomorrow. It will be a simpler, happier topic. I think we're going to do flowers. Can you take HRT? Yes, after 70. My mother's 81 now. She's just gone back onto HRT. But that's a story for another day. But yes, just to say, there's lots of good news out there. Thank you so much for being with me. Thank you for bearing with me. Those of you, I know many of you have stayed with me for the whole hour. Thank you. I hope it wasn't too long. But it's important stuff. So do share it. Share it with all your girlfriends. Share it with the women that you love. Bye-bye.